We are live for Diamonds
Are
and
we?
Pearls. Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
We're live.
Okay.
I got a
So
yellow
if
shirt. You got a yellow shirt. I got a gold cup.
yeah,
We got purple walls.
we
It's a
are
very
ready.
inclusive conference. We have all the
Very.
colors.
We have all the colors. So here we go. This will be the day. All right. So I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I got on my Chiquita yellow. Did you guys get the memo? Do you have on your Chiquita yellow? Some of us do. So good morning, Kanisa. So many folks in the chat. JD Washington, Rakabash. Germany is in the house. We got Purple
Ooh.
Sky. We got India. We got Chris Bornia. Welcome, Stephanie. So excited about this celebration. Got my Diamonds and Pearls box set on Given Tuesday and listened to it last week and watched that Blu-ray. That Glam Slam show is fire indeed. Good morning, Man Ray. Good morning, Randy, Christina, Blay Brown, and I'm sure Egger's here. The Netherlands in the house. We got Suzu's Petals from Greece. We got Stone Freak to the bone. That's right. We got Jesse in the house. Yes, Egger, you need sunglasses. With all these, we're going to bring so
morning.
much. It's a bright morning, so bright. And we got Clarissa, and I can't say good morning to everyone because we're going to just run out of time for our welcome. We are so excited that you are here with us to celebrate this. I am so excited about this Diamonds and Pearls, the Blu-ray in particular, but everything else. It's really, really amazing. So we are here for this.
Now you have both sets, right? Because I noticed you picked up the CD set because it's lighter, a lot lighter.
There you go. Yes, that's the reason why I'm picking up the CD. So, well, I got to give some more good mornings really quickly. It's so great to have you here, Becky. It's been a while. Thank you so much, Nikki, for being here. Thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you so much, Annie from France, because we got some What Did Prince Do This Week posse in the house, and I got to shout out them. Welcome, Casey. We're going to bring you on in just a hot second. And we got another person from Berlin, Germany. Germany is in the house this morning. Thank you so much. We got Monica. Let's see. Yes, Rakabash.
Me too, Raka.
Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you so much for being here. Yes, Celie, it's time to get off. We got some howdies to Arthur. We got everybody's here. We got Melbourneopolis in the house, if I said that right. It's so great to have you here. Hello from Belgium. The ATL Purple Sisters. All right. So we want to welcome you to our 2-day celebration. 2 days, 8 panels, about 40 speakers. And first of all, we are here to celebrate the one and only, there can be no other, Prince, as well as Diamonds and Pearls. We really want to keep the name of Prince on the lips of the children. So that's one of the reasons why we do this. But we also want to be in community with one another. And it's really important for us to gather when we can and fellowship, especially during these very difficult and challenging times. So I hope that for the next 2 days, you'll love being in the purple world. And let me tell you a little bit about what is going to be going on, even though most of you probably already know. But just let me show you, as one of my cousins would say. So this is the website here. And on the website, you'll see we have a code of conduct, and it's really simple. Just be kind to one another. Obviously, I think it's really important that we express our points of view. So it's not about not expressing your point of view. Just do not be mean to people. Everybody knows this. So that's one thing. But on the site, you can see who is actually participating. And you can go through and then you can click on somebody. And when you click on that person, you can find out more about them. And then in addition to that, we have 2 schedules. We have a more visual schedule for those of you who like the visuals. And you can flip between Saturday as well as Sunday. And if you don't have time for that, you just want the facts, you can go to the schedule at a glance. And yes, Tammy, I don't know about Jughead is different. Jughead is a song, so there might be a little Jughead bashing, but I personally think that Jughead has been redeemed by the Glam Slam show. And yes, Chris, it is about love for one another. Welcome, Tanja. Thank you so much for being here. Chicago is in the house. Thank you so much, Felicia, for being here. It's been a very long time since we have spoken. And yes, there's always justice for Jughead. Thank you so much. Lee Christian, one of our What Did Prince Do This Week regulars, gotta say, I'll give a shout out to Lee. All right. And so what else we want? If you register, it really means like subscribing to the newsletter. If you want to keep up to speed on what's going on over the next couple of days, and then the live stream, you know where the live stream is because you're here. But if you're inviting friends, you can put them to this live stream, which is essentially a playlist of all of the videos for today. All right. So welcome, Laura. It's so great to have you here. So for those of you who don't know, normally, well, actually, not right now. In a couple of hours, normally we would be doing What Did Prince Do This Week? And we always start off with music that we can play. And there's nothing really I can play because I don't want to stop the screen. But one of the things that's missing for me is the music. So I hope wherever you are blasting some of the songs in the background just to give it a little bit more festive vibe. So how are we doing on time? All right. So we have some more time. We got a few minutes because I got a poll because I know I love how some of you are really into your polls. So give me 1 second to share this tab instead. And let me present. And all right. So, oh, that's not going to work with us on here. So I got to move that away. And I'm going to put in the chat where you can go. So you can go to menti.com. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's menti.com, or you can scan that QR code and you need to put in these numbers 5937 3197. I always feel like I'm at bingo. 5937 3197. And let us know what city or country you're joining us from, even though you already have been doing that in the chat, but all of you have not been doing that. So let's see if someone's going to do that. So we got someone else from Australia, Smelly Melly. Welcome so much. Here we go. All right. We got West Haven, Connecticut in the house. I love the Republic of Brooklyn. That's so amazing. Awesome. So this is one of those word clouds that, so like if you're in Atlanta, keep typing Atlanta and it'll get bigger and bigger. If you're joining us from Minneapolis, if you type Minneapolis, it'll keep getting bigger and bigger.
Oh,
all right.
Cool.
We got Birmingham, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Honolulu. Welcome. I wish I was in Honolulu. Phoenix is in the house.
It's
Spartanburg.
early in Honolulu.
Yes. How early is it in Honolulu?
Like a lot, right? I don't have my hour converter.
Yeah.
We might find out in a minute though.
All right. Look, Melbourne is in the house. They must be here for Adam. And we got Minneapolis, Atlanta. Okay,
See,
the DMV.
about 5 a.m.
All right, about 5 a.m. Oh my God. Thank you so much for being here. We got to put that up on the screen. Thanks so much, Bonnie. All right, we got Bath, UK in the house. Tampa is always in the house. Welcome, April.
You know, Dee, I'm looking at the schedule. We've got some big panels today.
Yes, we do have some big panels.
One that I am especially looking forward to is going to be in the afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern, the next power generation.
Yes.
That's the one that I'm most interested in because a lot of these events, I think this one it's a big album, and for the weekend to be focused on this album, to start to hear from younger in age fans, because one thing that's very significant about Diamonds and Pearls is that it did create a new generation of fans for Prince.
Yes.
But we are talking about an album that's 30 plus years old. So I don't mean age generation. I don't mean the difference between, say, Generation X and Millennial. I just do mean that a brand new kind of fan that came to Prince without much of a previous reference to his work, like how we grew up, for example. So because Diamonds and Pearls really established a new Prince, if you will, that pretty much continued on for the rest of his career. This is Diamonds and Pearls is me looking at it, I see it as a template for the remaining 2 decades. And I'd love to hear those voices where, you know, if you cut me, I bleed purple. If you cut them, they bleed yellow or gold, right?
I love that.
Yeah, and a perspective of someone that is coming in fresh, if you will, allows me to actually learn something, because my purview is going to be different than theirs. And so I'm looking forward to this one because I've met a lot of the panelists over Twitter, but to see a whole panel, it's going to be exciting. We also have a writers panel today being helmed by Mr. Seeley McInnes. We have an essayist panel. Now, this is the one. Oh, that's tomorrow. Sorry.
That's tomorrow.
Flip too far. Flip too far. Flip
okay.
too far. We do have Michael Dean. This is what I was looking for. We do have Michael Dean coming on for the fellows panel. We'll have special guest Nicolay with us. We'll have Big Sexy with us. We'll have Eloy Listana with us. We'll have Law with us. That's going to be a bit raucous.
And Ricky. Yes.
It's going to be a bit raucous.
Yeah. It's like, that's the one I'm really looking forward to. I'm also looking forward to the next Power Generation for all the reasons that you said. But as everybody should know, Michael Dean is my partner in crime for What Did Prince Do This Week. We have so much fun together. And actually, he wasn't with us last week. Seeley stood in for him, so I haven't seen him in a couple weeks. So I'm really looking forward to Michael Dean. But how are we doing on time? We got a couple of minutes. So we also have Seeley today. And Seeley and I had a blast last week on What Did Prince Do This Week with the writers panel. And we're going to have my triplet, Camila, as well as Zach, who always has amazing things to say, and my brother in Harold Pride, who hasn't been with us in a while. So I'm super excited to hear from Harold, and I always want to hear what Scott Woods has to say. So I am super hyped for all these panels. Today it's going to be like fire, 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 as the kids say. Yep.
Yep. And how are we kicking it off? Because we're at time, aren't we?
We are at time. It's about, we're about to get ready for the International Lovers. And the International Lovers are going to be moderated by none other than the one and only Casey Rain, who I am going to bring to the stage. How you doing today, Casey? Thank you so much for being here, as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. And next up, we're going to bring on Karen, who got the memo about the Chiquita Yellow.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Yes.
morning. Good morning.
And then we're going to bring on Declan.
Hello.
Welcome, Declan.
It's great to be here. A real honor to be here.
Thank you so much. I really wanted you to be here because just a little inside story. Declan turned me down the first time and I cried, but I was able to get him to come on. So I'm so happy that Declan is able to be with us. And also someone else who got the memo, Adam, welcome so much.
Thank you,
Yes.
D'Angela. Very happy to be here and very excited to finally connect with Casey Rain. I love the Violet Reality. It's my bread and butter. Beautiful work.
Awesome. And last but definitely not least, we have Matt Thorne in the house. Welcome, Matt. Oh, you're on mute,
You're on
Matt.
mute. You're on mute, man.
I managed to not do that all year, and then StreamYard defeated me. But I was desperately searching my wardrobe for something yellow and realized I don't have any, so anything yellow. So I'm going to go out and buy. I did have in aspirations of the parade era, which I know isn't the right era today, have a yellow suit not so long ago, but I no longer fit into it. So I thought it would be embarrassing to squeeze into that. But it's lovely to see everybody forward to this.
All right. Well, Arthur and I, we're going to leave the stage and we're going to allow Casey to take over. And so, Casey, take it away.
Here we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone on this panel. Glad to be here with all of you. Hello to everyone watching. I'm really, really honored to be kicking off this first event in this fantastic weekend of events, as you just saw from the schedule. What a lineup. Before we get into this panel, I do want to say a couple of things. Particularly as a creative and an artist, as a lot of people on these panels are, we know very keenly the difference between the outcomes of events that people see or projects and how those can only happen because of the incredible, often overwhelming amount of work that went into it beforehand. So I just want to start with a massive, massive shout out to D'Angela and her team, because since I've known her 5 or 6 years. We've hung out in Manchester and Minneapolis and New York. I'm just constantly inspired by the incredible amount of effort and dedication that she puts in, both to virtual events like this and the IRL ones that she does in New York and elsewhere. It's really, really a huge amount of work. So just massive, massive shout out to her for that. And the second point that I want to start off with is I believe more than anything that Prince's music was ultimately about unity. And you can't spell community without unity. And that's what he did for us, right? And very often in this world that we live in, fast moving things and pressure and everything else, we get caught up in little things. We get caught up in little details. And while everybody always should have their opinion and their right to it and their preferences and their agreements and their disagreements, when we zoom out from that, isn't it incredible that he brought us all together in this way? Like, that's the thing that sticks with me and makes me feel grateful every day. I never feel lonely because I have this amazing Purple community, and that means so much to me. So that's, I think, the best place to start. So let's go with the introductions for a start. I'm Casey Rain. I'm a musician, songwriter, YouTuber. I work in tech, And probably everyone here knows me best for the YouTube channel, The Violet Reality, where for the last 7 or 8 years, we've made videos about the things that we find the most interesting about Prince and his legacy. The popular kind of stuff has tended to be the incredible interviews we've been able to do with so many Purple people, as well as our Deep Facts series, facts you didn't know about each of Prince's albums, which started during COVID because we had to shift our approach like everyone and wanted to do something different. And we're almost at the end of that journey. I think Planet Earth is the next one that we're doing in the series. So we're getting towards the end of it, and it's been a huge amount of fun. The response has been amazing to see. So that's me. I will go, I think, in order of people I see on the screen. So Karen, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I am a radio presenter and producer and a TV producer and a filmmaker, community history filmmaker. And of course, I love Prince. And my connection to Prince is like many in that it was just bringing together myself into a whole other community. And that's kind of what I've always tried to do, even through radio, is to make sure that Prince was always staying on the airwaves for the right reasons. And, often told that, there was no place for Prince. And I was always trying to challenge that. And also just to challenge people in my kind of like community to get on board with the love of Prince. And through that, I've often worked on 2 degrees of separation as I've interviewed people who are part of the Prince family, but not necessarily obvious in the Prince family. So I've interviewed a lot of people who've crossed paths with him, both from a community and giving aspect right through to a recording, and often the surprise aspect that he always spread around the world.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Adam, you're up next.
All right. Well, I actually have quite a lot in common with Karen. I'm a radio presenter here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm also a musician and a band leader. And I have, through my radio show, made connections with many Purple people. I think it started off with St. Paul Peterson when he came out with Sheila E. to Melbourne in 2010. And I capitalized on that interview and continued to sort of try and interview as many people in the Purple circles as possible. And that led to me being the musical director for Dr. Fink's tour to Australia in 2015. And my band Lake Minnetonka have since been the backing band for Tamar Davis when she came here. And every couple of years I make it over to Minneapolis to do some recording. So the Lake Minnetonka albums are sort of half made in Melbourne, half made in Minneapolis. So I see my sort of creative mission as bridging the gap between Australia and the USA, particularly Minneapolis music, and trying to find what the new Minneapolis sound is, or as I like to call it, the Melbourneapolis sound.
Can I just say as well, I should have said I'm in Manchester, England, because we are international, aren't we? So.
Yeah, this whole panel is international. Yeah.
That's a good point. I'm in Birmingham, home of Duran Duran, Black Sabbath, Steel Pulse, UB40. Yeah. Musical legacy we have here.
Lovely.
Mr. Matt Thorne.
Hey, Casey. Very nice to meet you and to see you on screen. Hope to see you in person at some point. My name's Matt Thorne. I live in London. I am a novelist and a music writer. And primarily my connection with this is that I wrote a critical study / sort of biography of Prince. And I worked on it from 2005 to 2012, and it came out then. It was published in the UK just as Prince, and then US as Prince, the Man and His Music. There you go. Thank you, D'Angela. And then it's just come out in a second edition in the US, and it's coming out in a second edition in the UK next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I have at least 2 copies of your book. I guess I will have a third when the new one comes out. It's funny, the second one, somebody bought it for me as a gift, and I was like, why would you think that I wouldn't already have this? You know me. But thanks for the introduction, Matt. And to finish off, Declan, last but not least.
Hi. So I'm based in Sheffield, England, and when I find the time away from the day job, I like to do some critical writing on music, but my main interest is what I like to call the interplay of form and content. So the way the music and the lyrics of a particular song will often be communicating a similar message, and how that can create a unified piece of artistic expression. Some of you may have seen me at the Triple Threat 40 Symposium, where I gave a presentation on 777 9311. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So I think the logical place for us to start, and I know what D'Angelo wants us to do, we'll start there, is to really hone in on international perspectives, since we have so many. We have, 3 different countries here, and all of those countries will view, I guess, every Prince project, but particularly Diamonds and Pearls, because of, as D'Angelo and Arthur just said, it representing a new era, and because of it being a huge selling album that reached into corners that perhaps not every Prince album did. Let's talk about a little about how everybody felt upon release of the album, their expectations, the realities of it, how much you knew about it beforehand, that kind of thing. Karen, I think I'd love for you to start this.
It was interesting that this was the album that was chosen to be released in this way for me as well, because it's hugely popular. And even though there's a discussion about how relevant it was at the time and how many singles there were, and also the element of rap and hip hop, it is actually the mainstay of radio. And I think, and also people absolutely love like the title track as well. So it was just obviously the anticipation of what was going to be included in this release. And I think here in the UK, people were interested. I know from our perspective, we're interested in that. And also Prince came to Manchester to tour this album. And I remember kind of growing up, this was one of the tours that was often repeatedly spoken about. So obviously there was an extended set list. So for us, it was interesting to see what was actually going to be on there. And I know, talking to fellow Mancunians, that as all Prince fans do, people have created their own set list again around this particular release, which is all the fun of it, isn't it, really? But Prince played and performed this album in 1992. So there's at Main Road. So the release also of the DVD is interesting for some people to cast their eyes back to and ears back to 31 years ago.
Adam, where do you think Diamonds and Pearls stood in the Prince pantheon at the time, and how do you think that's changed over time?
At the time of its initial release? Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because it was the first time Prince toured Australia. So we had never seen him before. And also it was my jumping on point onto the Prince fandom train. So the only thing I really knew about Prince was my sister had a compilation called Beat the Heat 90, and it had Thieves in the Temple. And I just remember it had this little thumbnail of Prince. I thought, who's that sleazy looking guy with the long hair and the 5 o'clock shadow? And I kind of wasn't really interested in him at the time. Then one day I was watching Video Hits after school, and Cream came on, and that was it. That was the greatest thing that I had ever seen and the greatest song I'd ever heard. And it was all over after that. So I convinced my parents to buy me a copy of the CD. And then I started just going back and buying all the previous albums and filling myself in on the 80s and the late 70s. So for me, Diamonds and Pearls is very, very significant. And so I was unaware, and I think all my peers were unaware of how controversial it was with the hip hop aspects and how it had changed from the sound everybody knew and loved from the 80s. So I just sort of took it all very as it was, and I didn't have the sort of the critical and I mean sort of like negatively critical ear that maybe I do now. I wasn't so judgy about music. I just used I'd listen to anything and love it. But there was definitely a wave of Prince mania here in Australia because it was the first time he had come out. So I remember walking around going, yeah, it's cool to like Prince. I'm not a nerd anymore. But then, it died down, and by the time Come came out, it was very uncool to like Prince. So I went back to being uncool.
Adam, did you buy the VHS of Get Off? Because I did, and I remember.
I almost had it here. I've got my Diamonds and Pearls DVD, but yes, I had the VHS of Get Off. I watched it to death, and not long after that, Sacrifice of Victor and Undertaker came out, and I would just go down to like HMV like every week and just see if anything new was on, and I'd tape MTV and I'd just watch it in fast forward just in case there was a new Prince video. So I fell very, very hard, but it was all because of Cream, that's what got me in. And for some reason, this is odd. I loved listening to the album, but I would skip Money Don't Matter Tonight and Live for Love. I don't know why. I didn't have any problem with the songs. I just never seemed to be in the mood to listen to them because based on the title. It's strange. I'm ashamed of it now.
Matt, you are in a very unique position of having to actually write down your thoughts of Prince's entire career in one go, in one piece of art. That not everybody's in that position. So, what was your perspective of Diamonds and Pearls at the time? And when you came to be in this position of have to place it amongst this greater work that you're writing about in this entire catalog, did your feelings about it change, or did anything make you view it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were lots of different periods of change, and I think things have happened again, which we'll talk about later since hearing the box set. But I mean, at the time, it really was about Get Off for me as well. That when that single came out, it was extraordinary. And the same with Cream and those maxi singles. It was sort of the Get Off maxi single, the Cream maxi single, and as other people have said, the VHS video and all of that was the really exciting part of it. I was just having a look before coming on today, sort of what was going on in the UK at the time, and that was the year when the big albums were things like Nevermind by Nirvana, Blue Lines by Massive Attack, Screamadelica by Primal Scream, and a lot of the kind of the critics of Prince at the time, like the NME, gave it 6 out of 10. It was sort of in the middle of the tables of all the music magazines, and of course I was as I say, even though I'm critical of the album, sort of slightly in retrospect in the book, at the time I played it to death like everyone else. This was the Prince album that everyone could play. That you didn't feel embarrassed about. I mean, as not that I ever felt embarrassed about being a Prince fan, but it was a thing about, here's something where everybody would like it, right? It's not just you going, you've got to listen to the bootlegs, you've got to listen to these unreleased songs. Here's a really big mainstream album that everybody likes.
That's a really good point, actually. And Declan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as my fellow millennial. There are Prince albums that are very easy to sell to people that are casual fans or don't know a lot about his music, and then there are albums that are very difficult to do that with. And I've always found Diamonds and Pearls is probably the easiest sell due to how accessible it is. Like it's a great straightforward pop structure of the time, and the messages are easy to digest. Money Don't Matter Tonight, or Diamonds and Pearls and things like that, which even compared to, I think, Love Symbol the next year is it's a way more accessible album. So have you found that to be the case in your exploration of it and your kind of conversations you've had with other people about this album in your study of it?
Yeah, it does seem to be when you have, I'm sure we've all had this, where you have conversations with people who aren't deep into the catalogue. Most people's knowledge, with the exception of possibly Most Beautiful Girl in the World, most people's the knowledge of the average person tends to stop around Diamonds and Pearls, and those songs, a lot of the songs from that album, you still hear on the radio today. So I think that speaks to, firstly, how successful they were at the time and the impact that they made, but also their longevity. They're still being listened to by a lot of people, and when you do play those songs to people, they do recognize them. So, but I think you're right in terms of much more so than Love Symbol, which I think is much more, in my opinion, I prefer Love Symbol for this reason. But it is a much more complicated I don't want to say adventurous, but it's more. I mean, the whole thing is basically a concept piece, whereas Diamonds and Pearls is not. It's much more, yeah, as you say, accessible, easily digestible for people. But yeah, it does seem to be the one that does seem to stick around with people a lot. So yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that probably everybody watching these videos and participating in these panels would probably not rate it as their #1 Prince album. It may slip into their top 5 or top 10, but for more casual listeners, actually, people have said to me, like, that's my favorite Prince album. Like, I've heard that from a lot of people who are, much more casual fans. I think that difference is quite interesting.
Yeah, but can I just say, Casey, as well, though, I think just to contradict that a little bit is that the Rosie Gaines being on that album really connected with people in a different way. So, remember, a lot of people were open, and that was, Black people in the UK were open to pop because they'd grown up on T-Rex and Bowie, and because of Top of the Pops, they had to be open to everything. So that also still had that appeal, because there's real still funk elements to Diamonds and Pearls, but Rosie Gaines' voice really connected with the people who loved a great singer, and she totally kind of connected with that Prince sound. And I was speaking to a friend of mine who was a singer back then and still is now with, like Hacienda Classical. And she said, like, they Simply Red went along to that gig, because so many people wanted to hear Rosie Gaines, and that transcended the, for some people saying, oh, it was an average album. She was not average. And I do remember a couple of years later being in the centre of Manchester, a live open gig that was free, and coming towards me was Rosie Gaines, and I couldn't believe it, because for many of us, she was not the same as, I'm not saying she's the same as, but she was like a Chaka Khan. The fact that was like Prince teaming up with somebody on that level. So for me, that does elevate that album, and just for a lot of people, and it's really connected with people here.
That's a great point, and that kind of leads me into something that I wanted to get to, particularly Karen, Matt, maybe you could speak on this a little bit. Did that kind of understanding of this being a new era of Prince, and an album that was billed as Prince and which is the first time that it happened since '86, was that something that you understood before the sort of promo cycle began and before the songs in the album came out? And was it a big deal and you knew that was coming, or was it like, wow, all of a sudden here's something completely new and different from Prince?
Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely for me, of that, in that period, we didn't have the internet. Sounded like an old man here, but we didn't have the internet. We only knew what fans were saying to each other. So we didn't. And there was much. I think with the initial run of this, even though he recorded some of the album in the UK and had done 21 shows over in London, 21 shows in the UK and 16 shows in London, it had gone quiet for a bit, so we didn't really know what was going on. And so for me, the sort of discovering, we saw a little bit of it in the videos and on the singles, but mainly it was getting that album and then pulling out the inner sleeve and seeing the new Power Generation and realizing this is an entirely new band and getting to know them. So I think it was quite a different perspective at the time. I think Diamonds and Pearls did feel, at least for me as a fan at the time, that it came out of nowhere. I mean, musically, maybe not, because as we all know, it was a sort of mixture of styles that were current at the time. It had sort of, and this is clearer through the the bigger release. But the connections with New Jack Swing, the connections with hip hop, a little bit more of jazz sort of starting to come through there. So we sort of we could hear that sound, but it did feel, for me, it did feel completely new at the time, and it felt like we were discovering it, continuing to discover it until the tours showed up. But yeah, I had no idea of who was in the new Power Generation to begin with, and I looked at all those photos and didn't know who they were. But that was the same with the the Revolution to begin with. You didn't know who they were, and then and every other version of the new Power Generation that followed, you sort of look at them to begin with and think, who are they? And then you think they're all amazing musicians, and you get to know each of them individually, and their personalities come through. I suppose there was a little bit of this sort of new sense that things were changing round about the time of Graffiti Bridge, perhaps a little bit, and definitely a little bit in the new tour. But but definitely didn't have a sense that the new power generation was on its way.
I mean, for me, it was the era of, like of school days. If we had a marketplace in Manchester that sold a lot of bootlegs, and it sold a lot of bootlegs of prints. So sometimes things were a bit out of sync because we were looking at bootlegs and cassettes and images. And like I say, because there was no kind of internet, we were always trying to piece together, the order of things. And so I do think the new power generation seemed brand new in the way, like I always got a new band, but it wasn't a surprise because he was always doing something different. But like I say, well, my memory was kind of like muddled with that, which I still got, was because we were also looking for the bootleg, like for the stuff that had escaped, the record labels. And so because obviously he was always just producing so much work, it was just, there's something new again, he's taken another turn, he's gone down another avenue. That's how it was for us. And a lot of people, as well as buying from record shops with white labels, would go to that market to pull out these bootleg cassettes.
Yeah, absolutely. Classic Camden Market.
Yeah.
And people's what, 5th, 6th, 7th generation black albums that you can barely hear.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt, Karen, I know Adam said that he did. I think you said that you saw Prince on that tour in Australia around that time, or he was.
I did, and I was aware of the after show too, but I was 13, so I was lucky enough to get let out on a school night to see Prince at the actual concert. Yeah.
Do you know who the support was? Sorry, do you know the support? Because I've just checked, and the Pasadenas were the support in '92 in Manchester.
I have no idea who the support was in Melbourne. No. But I just saw Devo the other night in the same venue that he played.
Nice. So Matt, did you see the shows at that time?
Sorry, no, I didn't see that. I saw the new tour. That was a tour I didn't get to the Diamonds and Pearls tour.
Karen, did you see those shows?
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure if I saw those shows, and I was just speaking to someone earlier. I think I did, but the reason why I say I'm not sure, I was like, I was always just so mesmerized. So I know I did see him in that time, but I was always so mesmerized in the early days of the fact that he was before me. And I know that another British artist, Beverly Knight, I know the first time she went, she fainted. So I'm kind of was in that zone of like, but I just know initially it was the fact I was actually, because my mum is a big music fan, but she did not like him. So I think the fact that I was allowed to kind of get out and see him, I just know was a blur. But I have such clear memories of the yellow suit and everything that I think I did, but I think I was just overwhelmed, if I'm being totally honest about that, for the first Prince experience.
Declan, where did you come to Diamonds and Pearls in your exploration of his catalog at large, and how did you, what decisions did you make in which order to kind of study each album?
So I came to Prince through the 2001 Very Best Of compilation. And second only to Purple Rain, Diamonds and Pearls is the most represented album on that compilation. There's the blast 4 tracks that are Get Off, Money Don't Matter, Cream, and what's the other one? The title track, Diamonds and Pearls. But as I say, there's 4 Diamonds and Pearls tracks and there's 4 Purple Rain tracks on the album as well. So that, as somebody who wasn't familiar with his catalog at the time, that suggested to me that, at least in a commercial sense, this was a significant chapter of the discography. But I must admit, I did do all the 80s albums first, and then started to work through the 90s. But then I did find a problem where a lot of the 90s material was out of print by the time I was doing this. But Diamonds and Pearls wasn't. So Diamonds and Pearls, Love Symbol, and Come were the 3 that were still readily available commercially to buy. Which again, I think speaks to not only the label situation, but also speaks to the fact that they were still reasonably in demand for people buying. So I reckon, what would it have been? It probably was the 13th, maybe, or so album of his I bought. So it was towards the second act of my discovery of Prince, I would say. But yeah, so yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
So something that I want to discuss that I think is particularly relevant for us as an international group, and I'll preface this by saying, as a hip hop fan, I've always loved Tony. I think Tony is incredible. As a person, he's even better. I've hung out with him so many times now, and he is the nicest person. He's always got time for you. He's so warm. He's just such a great guy. But we cannot ignore the fact that there was a perception amongst certain crowds at the time that there were sects of people in the fan base or at large that felt that Prince should not be doing hip hop or should not be working with a rapper. And many of them over the years have continued to express that they don't like this album for that reason. How was that perceived by all of you in your own experiences, areas you lived in, the press that you read, etc., and your personal opinions at the time? I'd love to hear about that.
Could I start with this one? So, I mean, I don't think I ever felt any kind of criticism towards Tony M. I always thought he was, brilliant. And I think the box set really, he really shines things here, and in the live shows, there are things that you didn't necessarily see at the time. But I'm sure there was a crowd that didn't like the idea that he was, using hip hop in his music. But I think a lot of there was another sort of strand to criticism, which was that maybe Tony M wasn't as hard a rapper as some of the gangster rap that was going on at the time. To look at the big rap albums of that year and look at, that, as I said, Ice-T's original Gangster being one of the big ones. The idea was perhaps that Tony M was perceived as being a little bit soft, but I never had that kind of feeling, because I love Digital Underground. They were always, one of my absolute favorite hip hop bands from the minute they started. And it seemed to be even at the time, there seemed to be even before I knew that the Humpty Dance was what, Tony M doing the Humpty Dance was partly what Prince picked up on, and why he had a sort of an interest and relationship with that band. So it sounded really similar to me, in a good way. So it just sort of felt like that's the connection. I'm not worried that it didn't sound like the sort of harder edges of hip hop. It just sounded like Digital Underground, and I like them, so I like Tony M.
I also like Tony M. I've always loved him. So, I mentioned I was 13 in 1992. So, yeah, 12. And I memorized all the raps, was really cool. Had my flow on and everything. And the first time I talked to Tony, I told him that. I let him know that me and my friends, we knew all the raps, and we weren't aware of any controversy. We didn't know that this was a bold stylistic move for Prince. And I also think that too much is made of that so-called diss on the Black Album from Dead on It. I don't think Prince ever really came out and said he didn't like rap. But I find it really interesting, Prince's rapping style versus Tony's rapping style. And one really cool thing about the Super Deluxe is you can hear Prince doing the rap that we know Tony doing in one of the outtakes. And yeah, it's really different delivery. So there were I think the innovative thing was that Prince wedged those raps into all sorts of songs where you wouldn't normally get it. And in no way did Prince's version of hip hop resemble the other hip hop that was going on. It wouldn't have been appropriate, and Prince wouldn't have dug it if there was some hard rapper, real hard edge gangster rap, violent, misogynist type of thing going on his music. Although Daisy Chain does get close.
Yeah, I think I don't think anybody thought he was misusing hip hop at the time, who kind of I grew up with, or who were listening to it or going to the gigs. People weren't thinking about why is Prince doing that, because he often just injected humor into what he was doing. And so that was the style. And Tony M felt that he was a continuation of that style, like I say, the Digital Underground, just that, having a good time, having that groove and playing with that. I think it was the press that particularly didn't like it. And yes, it was the era gangster rap, but it was also the era of raps being very clear and lyrical. I've just done a 3-part series on hip hop and women in hip hop, and this is the era where, yeah, you could do, as Adam said, you could recite the raps, you could recite the words. And just to say, I think maybe why Prince was, he said he didn't really diss hip hop, but I think also though why he embraced it later was he was coming from that era of the old school, following in the footsteps of the James Browns and everyone. And they rapped before it was called rapped. And Prince also had that style, that he was, because he was so adept at cheeky, mischievous, hard-hitting lyrics. And he had that great talking style. So I think he probably thought, I don't that's the element of it that I don't like. But he was able, I think, to rap well and keep us amused. And I just think a lot's made of it being naff on Diamonds and Pearls. And I don't think we felt that it was naff. I personally, not just everyone else saying it, I personally loved it. And I don't remember everyone kind of saying, why are you listening to that? Just at that era, the people I grew up with or were around who went to gigs, if they just didn't get Prince rather than they didn't get Prince and hip hop.
I think that's a really great point. And I think Tony's presence, being a member of a band making funk and dance songs with live instrumentation, it's exactly what it had to be in that situation, right? Like anybody who was expecting it to sound like Rakim or Scarface is not going to work, right? It would make absolutely no sense. If you look at other bands that were doing similar things at the time, I love the second CNC Music Factory album, which is full of like raps. It's fantastic. There's like a common lineage there as well.
It's just a thing, wasn't it? So, Robin's just said in the comments about he just felt Prince was trying too hard. One thing in the reviews at the time, when you look at the British press as well, they said he was too old for what he was doing at the age of 33. And I know that, some hip hoppers, even at that time, were young. And so maybe it did feel at the time he was 10 years too old for it. Perhaps maybe that was a perception. But then also you read in reviews that he still looks incredibly young and impish. So again, it's just like having a slight dig at Prince for having a dig's sake, I suppose,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think India just posted a quote, that the Sky Magazine quote in the comments that I wanted to touch on as well. And I actually think that there's a bit at the end of that quote where he kind of he starts off sort of being defensive and be like, I never said that. But at the end, the quote is like, anyway, everyone has the right to change their mind. I've always found that to be like so profound, right? Like it seems like a truism when you first read it. And actually, if like Prince is open, this genius to be like, you know what, like, hey, like maybe I was wrong, cool, so what, right? Then everybody can do that. Like nobody has to be steadfast with an opinion in the face of change or new evidence.
Well, Matt Fink told me that back in the early days he would be working on some sort of jazzy licks, and Prince said to him, and as we all know, every time someone tells a Prince story they do the voice, and Prince said to him, what do you want to play that music for, Matt? And totally basically told him never to sort of play in that way. And then you look at something like News or Rainbow Children, and he totally came around to that, and he was oh, am I black or white, am I straight or gay? And then in the musicology era, he's like Bowie in Let's Dance, hyper masculine, pinstripe suits, come on.
Yeah, but also when I was doing the hip hop series, a lot of the people in the hip hop and rap community said that there was a wealth of black musicians who didn't like hip hop and rap. Prince is always singled out, but they said they were personally and directly told, and also it went into print, that a lot of people that we look up to just really didn't get it and didn't support the music until much later on. So, he was off the time. It wasn't just he was like the only one. It was new. Remember, it was just so new, that music, that, I know he was ahead of his time for most things, but Prince was an old soul, wasn't he? So it's not surprising that he didn't absolutely adore hip hop, because he was old school.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting to track with how much the music industry was changing in the late 80s and early 90s, the directions that people ultimately went in or could have gone in, or maybe we're getting pulled into by outside forces, a record label, A&R says you should do this or whatever. And one of the things that happened, which is directly relevant to Diamonds and Pearls, particularly now that we have the Super Deluxe, is a lot of funk bands had to start making New Jack Swing in the late 80s, early 90s, right? Like even like there's a New Jack Swing Ready for the World album. Like everyone was at it. Prince, obviously, Michael came and just absolutely destroyed it with Dangerous, which is probably the greatest New Jack Swing album of all time. But Prince was also in that position and ultimately didn't really do it because he found the new groove of Diamonds and Pearls and the MPG. But he almost did. And we hear that on the Super Deluxe. And he did in a sense of songs that he gave away. They ended up with other people. So there is that, but it's not... it wasn't as well known about that he had done this until this Super Deluxe came out, and we got.
There was a lot of New Jack Swing on Graffiti Bridge.
Kind of, not as blatant as I think the Martika stuff and some of the outtakes that we have on Diamonds and Pearls. Let's get into it. Let's get into the Super Deluxe. What's everybody's favorite thing about it?
Slimmy, gimme.
Igor.
Can I say I love Thunder Ballet? Because I like.
Where was the video? Where was the Coffee Rock video?
I know. I had to kind of like go sideways. I know exactly. That was it.
For me, it's because I as much as I like the songs where we're getting the kind of the originals version of things, I really like the songs that I didn't know about before. So for me, it was Dark Side, Blood on the Sheets.
Yes, I love Blood on the Sheets. Yeah.
And Alice Through the Looking Glass. Those are the three standouts for me. I mean, I like lots of it. I like almost all of it, but those are the three that really blew me away.
I think Pain for me is a big standout.
Yeah. No, I have to agree with Matt. I think for me, there's lots of great material on the set, but the crown jewel I think of the set is, for me personally, is Blood on the Sheets and adjacent to that, Dark Side. But because I think both within, I mean, Matt, you mentioned earlier about the fact that Nevermind was just around the corner, basically. And although I wouldn't necessarily class Blood on the Sheets as a grunge song, it does inadvertently hew quite close to the aesthetic trappings of grunge. And if you look at when he recorded that, I believe it was January 91. So at that time, grunge wasn't a mainstream concern. So there is this. We were just talking about it with the hip hop thing, and I saw a few comments to this effect in the comments section, and you see it a lot with the reviews at the time, especially with the hip hop. He's one of the accusations leveled at the album is that he was following trends with integrating hip hop. And whether you agree or disagree with that argument, that is one of the things the album is tagged with. But if you look at Blood on the Sheets and where culture was going with the release of Nevermind, he was kind of ahead of, maybe inadvertently or not, sometimes what you're creating and the culture just lines up inadvertently through without you meaning to do it. He was kind of ahead of where culture was going with a song like Blood on the Sheets, in my opinion, with the advent of grunge just around the corner. So for me, and also the song's just amazing. I think it's just one, and it prefigures the Undertaker material just around the corner. So for me, that is the crown jewel of the set, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. I agree with you totally on that, Declan, as well. I liked Get Blue and the voice as well. Alice Through the Looking Glass. They kind of stood out for me. His vocals are just lush, aren't they, on Get Blue, I think.
Oh, it's got that Quiet Storm beauty to it, doesn't it?
The melody is just gorgeous of Get Blue. Yeah, incredible.
I think touching on the what Declan was just talking about and the sort of maybe like proto grunge elements, we might say, this is one of the reasons why I think this is a successful deluxe set to me in what I want from a deluxe set, in that you get these tantalizing tastes of different directions where something could have gone, and it gives you the context to draw it back to how it became what it became, right? So not just with the sort of proto-grunge Blood on the Sheets Dark Side stuff, but with the New Jack Swing stuff, with some of the other, early versions of songs that we have or whatever that feel different. Even with My Tender Heart, right? Isn't that just like Boys to Men before Boys to Men, like a year earlier? Like that's a classic, like that could have been a massive hit if he had chose to gone in that direction. But it would have been, again, a different kind of tone for the album that he didn't go with.
It's interesting, isn't it, that they're not thinking about singles from this box set? Do you not think? Because new generations come to music all the time, and people are rediscovering different genres of music, particularly since lockdown. So it's really interesting that they've not selected anything to put out there.
Yeah, I mean, the songs that they put on streaming before the full release still seem to be, of all the outtakes, the most streamed ones by a significant amount. So in that sense, it's almost like the opposite of what we would expect from a single strategy, or maybe that's just how it is now. You're three or four pre-releases before a full thing, and I mean those.
But you know what I mean? This time where it's hard for new music to get on. But if it's like the same way as the Beatles, look at that. Just look at the Beatles. It's like everyone just played it, regardless of what it sounded like. Do you know what I mean?
The new song, Beatles song.
Yeah, and it's just like, why wouldn't you do that with like a Get Blue or why wouldn't you just pull that out? And because that could play daytime or nighttime. It's just really interesting that they did premiere it in that particular way, and also in a way that people could get on board, because it's a catalogue that's equivalent to have that merit of getting that publicity that way, I think.
I wonder if it's just really hard to make a decision on picking one song from all of these outtakes to put all of your budget and focus behind. I don't know. I feel like we'd probably all pick a different one. Everyone in the comments would pick a different one.
I mean, I thought it was really interesting with this set, because what I imagined it was going to show us was, before it came out, was it would show that Prince was being really influenced at the time by hip hop and jazz. I've always felt that Diamonds and Pearls, I mean, if those other kind of bootlegs that were the Diamonds and Pearls beginnings, what was very clear when those songs leaked was that these are tracks that are born out of, or there's a hip hop connection to them, but there's also a very strong jazz connection. But then I was interested in what was being said about Dark Side and Blood on the Sheets, because yes, absolutely, I think you're right, Declan and Casey, about it being proto grunge, but I think the basis of it is Jimi Hendrix, and as somebody else said in the chat, Funkadelic as well. So it's basically that he had. So you realise that this wasn't only just an album that could have gone in a more hip hop direction or a more jazz direction. It could have also gone in a New Jack Swing direction. It could have gone in a heavy rock direction. And that's, the exciting thing about Prince is whenever you think that he's doing two things, he's actually doing eight, so the box has been a real surprise to me. It hasn't solved Diamonds and Pearls for me. And I think one of the things that's interesting about Diamonds and Pearls is it works as itself. There's nothing on the box set. There's stuff on the box set that I like more than anything that's on Diamonds and Pearls, but I didn't hear it and think he should have taken that track off and put this track on instead. I feel. I know it's what I did. Sorry, there's one, only one. Go on.
And I think it's the one that everyone puts out there. I don't think Schoolyard should have been on there.
Oh no, I agree, but no, I meant on the album itself.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Can we talk about Letter for Miles being the only representative of a Madhouse kind of instrumental jazz jam on the whole set? And I think it's really loose. It's we've heard lots better. It ain't over till the fat lady sings, and like those players. I reckon I've heard a different version on a bootleg that was tighter and didn't have all those. There was a lot of extraneous layers in there, and I'm just wondering about the curatorial aspect. I mean, even the track list itself doesn't seem to divide stuff up. These are the NPG tracks. These are the Martika tracks. It all seems quite haphazard. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd have to ask Dwayne about that sequencing. I didn't feel it was. I didn't feel it was super like haphazard or not making sense. But I also agree that I can't tell what the idea was for the structure, because it's not chronological. It's not, here's a set of songs in this direction, here's one in that. So I don't know. I will say sequencing is hard no matter what. Like, we probably all understand that. But I think overall it still feels pretty cohesive to me. I can pretty much put on any of the outtake discs and listen to them back to front, and it doesn't jar me, which I can't say for Sign of the Times Deluxe, which is obviously a much harder proposition, being as it was built from 3 or 4 different projects, and then we get more of all those different projects. There's no way that Deluxe was ever going to feel cohesive. You got to pick out bits and pieces here and there. But this one, I feel like I can go through it and have an experience of it.
Casey, what are your thoughts on Letter for Miles?
I don't have a lot.
Go on, tell me 10 things I didn't know about Letter for Miles. Let's go.
Love to wait for the next video. It's great. It's musically fantastic. It's a standout on the set in that it's completely different from everything else on the set. In that this was clearly something that was done out of personal emotion of feeling loss at Miles's passing and paying tribute to him in the way that Prince knew how and did best. But it was, it's one of those things where clearly this was never going to be on this album or probably any other album, which makes it a fascinating thing to include.
Cool.
It feels a bit more as a box that it's sort of giving you everything to make sense of yourself, I think, in a way. Do you know, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of, as you're saying, sequencing is hard, but it doesn't feel like that's the main thing going on here. It's sort of like, we can't make any sense of it, over to you. And that's quite nice,
So also,
I just want to jump on really quick, just because Casey, I think it's actually in chronological order, the songs, because I'm looking at the. Yeah, I always.
That answers that question.
Yeah, it's in chronological order, so I'll leave now.
Okay, then that makes a lot of sense. I totally missed that.
I was just saying that when you curate, because I curate exhibitions kind of mainly, but also when you are putting together a lot of material, you always have to be present to give the backstory, because it's really hard that once you want to go into all that detail, it's really difficult to give that context. So I took from it that was maybe the rawest version of Letter for Miles and why it was on there, but and maybe that's kind of why it's in there. But I think, interestingly enough, there's been a lot of discussion around his relationship with Miles. So, maybe from that aspect, a little kind of essay, a liner note around that would have given you more context. But you want to do that around all the tracks, and then that ends up being, it's something that's part of your research, but you can't actually physically get it onto a box set, no matter how thick or deep in the history is that it's giving. That's the difficulty, really.
But Edgar's made a good point about the album already having been out when Letter for Miles was done, and I think that's probably one of the hardest things for putting together a set like this, is like, where is your start point and where is your stop point? And your start point is where before the album's was being done, and your end point is where after it was maybe already out. That's a really difficult thing to do, and I know Dwayne did give some context on that a little bit on Facebook. I think he had made a post about, we decided to make the start point here and end point here because of, like, I can't remember all the details of it, but that's really hard, right? But also fascinating.
But there are pieces missing, aren't they? That's the other thing, because I mean, yes, it's chronological, but there are songs not on there, like In the Name of Love or the cover of Turn Your Lights Down Low, and that, so, and I think that's always the problem with trying to do Prince in that chronological way, and it's good to have as much of it as possible, but there's always going to be stuff that doesn't fit because it's for different projects, or just you're not able, you don't have the rights perhaps with the cover. I don't know if they have the rights to the cover to put it out, but there's always more to the story. You've never pinned it down. You can never go, this is Prince from this era to that era. There's always things that question that.
And if you're picking specific sort of start point and end point dates, right, then, well, there might be a song a week before your chosen start date that fits perfectly musically, and you've decided kind of like arbitrarily that it's not in that era. It's so difficult.
Exactly.
I think this is also what we were talking about here, makes more of an argument for year-based compilation, so year-based box sets as opposed to album-based box sets, because a lot of the tracks on here don't actually have much to do with Diamonds and Pearls itself. It's is just what he recorded around the time that he was also recording the other material. So you have the alternate take of Cream, the early version of Insatiable, and what eventually became Jughead. And that sort of material tells more of an album-specific story about Diamonds and Pearls, as opposed to, say, the Martika material, or even to some extent, I suppose you could argue, the Dark Side Blood on the Sheets. That's more, and Letter for Miles, that's more material that he just recorded around the same time he was doing the Diamonds and Pearls material. But does it really give us more information about the album itself, or is it just, as we've said here, is it just that this material falls within the start point and the end point? So maybe this is an argument for going forward, possibly at least doing separate kinds of releases. So you have your album-based box sets where you get your multiple takes of the songs or early versions of songs that eventually made the album, and then you have sort of your year-based sessions box sets that focuses on material that he was recording that was then meant for other projects.
I love that
idea. Just an idea.
Well, that's a good point to throw a bomb into the discussion. Some people watching this, from some of you on the panel, may know or may not know, a big point of contention around the estate transition from Comerica to Londell and the New People was that there was originally under Comerica this compiled, planned box set which included Diamonds and Pearls and Love Symbol stuff. Allegedly, Diamonds and Love was the name, and a very sort of long and perhaps more complete 2 to 3 year, 4 year base set. NPG members that I know were not happy about that because they wanted to, obviously have projects given individual attention. But clearly, maybe the label or the previous estate had their reasons for doing this. What do you think about those two approaches? Do you think that there could have been some benefits to doing that more kind of completist, massive box set, maybe year-based approach? Or do you think the right decision was made there?
I have a kind of selfish point of view, which is that I miss the days when you had to really want to find this stuff, and you would go, to the markets and hunt down the bootlegs, and you'd hear stories about these songs, and they had mythical proportions. And now it's just, they just give you all this stuff, whether you want it or not, and a casual Prince fan could just stumble upon junk music on YouTube that like some of us dreamed of hearing for decades, so I actually don't advocate releasing everything. Like, maybe release it in a certain form, but not just putting it up all on streaming services for anybody and everybody. I know that's selfish, but I just miss the passion that you had when you had to be a bit more invested and you had to hunt for the stuff, and then it made it so much more rewarding when you found it.
I feel that, and I think there's also something to be said for cadence, particularly with somebody that has as much music as Prince did, and finding that right balance, right? Because it can be overwhelming to be like, wake up one day, here's 50 new songs for you to listen to, and it's like, it's not a bad problem to have, right? But you want to be able to absorb everything.
I just wanted to respond to that. Sorry, Casey, to your point about combining the Diamonds and Pearls and Love Symbol. I really felt that wouldn't have been a good idea, and I was really glad that it didn't happen. That said, I would want 2 box sets rather than 1. I don't want the Love Symbol stuff to go away. I just think that should be out in a separate set. And I think, and equally with Adam's point, I mean, I totally get that. I mean, one of the things that I also find about a lot of these sets, particularly with the Sign of the Times one, for example, was it was really weird to hear the music in such good quality, and something was a bit lost. You know, as much as I love the sound of it, having better versions of it, actually there was something about the murkiness of the bootleg versions that I really liked. But obviously with Diamonds and Pearls, that's not there isn't the same issue, because it's less kind of home studio stuff. It's all quite well produced anyway. So, you know, we don't, you know, everything on there is, you know, is good to have. So I'm happy for it to, you know, to be put out in great amounts, and the more the better. But I think equally it's going to take us a long time to get through it. You know, I mean, I've been listening to this box set since it came out, but I still don't really feel like I know all of it. You know, even the songs where I've heard the alternative versions, like the Martika, you know, versions of those songs, I still feel there's something different in Prince's versions of that, which hasn't completely revealed itself to me yet, that I'm going to keep listening to it. You know, this feels like something that will stick around. I mean, I got to say, I was really impressed with this box set. You know, and I think having the, I mean, there's also the problem I know with the, you know, with the Sign of the Times one, there was perhaps concerns about, because it's all on, you know, the vinyl version is going to get too heavy or too expensive, and it's going to be a point at which it's priced out. And I worry that same thing might have happened with the Love Symbol and the Diamonds and Pearls ones, because it would, this is already quite a big set. You know, if you threw in you know, Love Symbol as well, then it's going to be massive and perhaps, you know, sort of uncontainable. So I think two smaller sets, as long as it doesn't get lost. That's my, I mean, that was the I'm sure, you know, lots of people, you know, Love Symbol I think has, I mean, I have mixed feelings about it as well, the original version, but you know, that's another kind of beloved album in lots of ways. So I think people would really love to have all of that stuff. So I mean, it's a bit like the, you know, waiting for Parade or whatever, you know. Basically, I just want all of it to come out eventually.
I think that's a really good point about kind of structure and pricing and strategy, because you know, I can personally attest, and probably I'm sure a lot of other people can as well, that they know people who have said, oh, I want to watch that show, like the Glam Slam 92 show, but they're not going to go out and spend, you know, $200 or, you know, whatever on a massive box set just to get it. Previous years we got those concerts on YouTube as well, but that doesn't seem to have happened this time, and everybody needs to see that show, so it needs to happen. let's talk about the show. It's a great segue talking about the show. I saw it at Celebration 2022, was it? Yeah, 2022, and then had this like ridiculous 18-month wait to see it again and remember if it was really as good as we all thought it was the first time. And, you know, luckily when everybody else saw it, like they had the same reaction. I was like, okay, I wasn't second guessing myself over the course of this last year. What did you all think the first time you saw Glam Slam 92?
I mean, I thought it was incredible. I mean, the Sacrifice of Victor in particular, that took my head off. I mean, that is amazing. That for me, that's the highlight of the whole set. But the show, but also that performance.
I think this is the what's great to see it again is, I think that was the era that was where Prince was seen as particularly hot, if you know what I mean, kind of for all the right reasons. And I think, and so, and it's one of those, does your memory serve you right in terms of that kind of experience and that feeling? And it absolutely does. And the element of the on-point musicianship and just all that fusion of gospel, blues, all of the things that we're always trying to tell people, this is why Prince is so great, is in that performance, isn't it? And that's why it's just a shame that that's the one thing we talk about, kind of price points, is that it should be more accessible for people to buy and view for those particular reasons, because that's why it was a great, you know.
I think one of my takeaways from Glam Slam, you know, every time I see it and try and process it and just be as in love with it as much as I am, it's actually not that common for any artist on that level who's over a decade into a successful career at that point to see a show from them that is like 90% new music, right? That's the thing. It's like all Diamonds and Pearls, and then like a little bit of, you know, 1999, Purple Rain, whatever else at the end. Like that's the afterthought, you know. Yeah, we'll do those things, but most of the show is new music, and you can tell how excited he is to be doing that, to have the freedom to do that in his own, venture club that he owned or co-owned or whatever it was, his space. That's what makes it exciting, I think, gives him. That's why he's dancing up on the bar, right? And the bartenders are just like trying to do their jobs behind it. And you're just like, what am I watching? This is incredible. Most artists are not in that position. And I think that's what stands out to me for it.
I think what's interesting, what you've just said there about how new material, well, relatively new material heavy the set is. I've seen a lot of people talk about maybe they should have included a show from the tour. But with the tour,
Earl's Court,
as
please.
with most stadiums, yep. But with those type of shows, you have to make concessions to playing the hits, So in terms of a representation of the material of the era, I think this is a better show, showing off the band. Because as you say, there's Nothing Compares to You, and then a bit of 1999 and Baby I'm a Star at the end, I think. But apart from that, it's all material from Diamonds and Pearls. So it's a better, in my opinion, it's a more focused and streamlined approach and representation of the era in a live setting than I think maybe a stadium show would be. But I would like to see a stadium show as well. But we want everything. Yeah.
I mean, the Special Olympics stuff is great as well. The behind the scenes stuff before that, and then the live performance there, which is probably closer to a main show. I mean, I'd like Earl's Court as well, of course.
The Manchester show.
yeah, absolutely. But I thought that was really great. I love the chatting, the behind the scenes chatting was great. Really great to see them. I don't know, it's just the sort of realness to that, and then then immediately to see them do the sound check, and then Prince saying, we're gathered here to get through a sound check. It's just.
I love seeing those kind of situations where you've got like Prince always impeccably dressed no matter the occasion, and all like your sound engineers in their jeans like putting wires in here and like building a stage over there. It's just such like a weird clash when you see it happen at the same time.
And he couldn't stop himself, could he? I mean, he starts off and you can tell he's bored and he's not really making an effort, and then suddenly he's doing a full show in the middle of the afternoon and would have wanted to stay there and probably stayed there through to the main show. It's incredible.
I mean, sorry, Adam. Sorry, you go ahead.
Thanks, Declan. I'll be quick. His mood was so buoyant across those shows. Like he was loving being in that new milieu with those musicians, some of whom he'd known for a long time, but actually putting together that crack squad of mavericks and playing stuff to that level, his new conception of his latest music, having so much fun with it. He's smiling, he's beaming, they've got all that incredible choreography. And then, because he tends to put on a much darker kind of face, it's probably an act half the time, but for a lot of his, 90s material, he's very moody. I'm moody Prince today, but it wasn't like that in that era, and it's really wonderful to see how warm and giving he is on the stage.
Because gospel
Declan.
was in the house, he had to behave himself.
That's right.
But not behave himself, but he had to. How was he not going to be uplifted with that going on? Do you know what I mean? It's like switches the mood, doesn't it?
Yeah. Declan, you were saying.
I was just really to say that I've seen it multiple times now, and I still can't get over how good the picture quality is. Like there is so much texture and warmth to the actual footage itself, like the image resolution, that the restoration job, the upscaling job, I think is just spectacular. Personally, in my opinion, I think this is the high bar of the live concerts that we've got in previous box sets. This is what, for me anyway, future box sets will have to stand up against, and just the way that the live show is constructed as a document, in terms of where you have all the stuff at the beginning, talking about the film crew and even showing the boxes of the reels. And then you have the credits section at the end where you see more of the behind the scenes stuff, where it just adds a nice, the show is spectacular as it is, but those bookends just really add a nice frame around the show for me that I think were somewhat lacking in previous box sets. It makes it feel more like a concert film on the level of, say, Stop Making Sense, or even the Sign of the Times film itself. Whereas in previous box sets, I feel the shows have just been like they have the video and maybe there's a little bit of text at the start, but then that's it, kind of. Whereas for me, I felt a lot of care and effort went into creating this show as a visual document, as opposed to just some live footage, if that makes sense.
Question: how many people on this panel have listened to the Dolby Atmos mix of the album? Okay, just me and Matt. So we won't spend too long talking about it then. What do you think, Matt?
I've got mixed feelings. I don't know whether it's I mean, I've got a relatively good setup to listen to it through, but I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds okay, but it doesn't sound mind blowing. It's a little bit muddy to me in places, but I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you know, Dolby Atmos, I guess, being a relatively new, well, not that new, but, you know, kind of a new, it's new that there's not that much stuff that I can compare it to in terms of other releases. You know, the new Peter, well, for Prince fans, the new Peter Gabriel album has a mix by Hans Martin Buff, the producer, you know, so that's something I've compared it to, and that sounds, you know, better to me than this does. But I don't, you know, I mean, also the other thing about it is, of course, you know, I'm listening to it through a different setup and not through my normal stereo, so it doesn't, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, to give a bit of context, and it is interesting that Hans did the Peter Gabriel stuff, and Chris James, also Prince engineer, did you know, the Diamonds and Pearls Atmos mix and the Welcome to America and the, you know, Purple Rain live ones as well. But the difference that I think is important to note is that Hans worked with Peter Gabriel from the start, so that Dolby was part of the production process for the entire album. Whereas most Atmos stuff is like what Chris has to work with this, where you have your existing stereo mix and your existing, you know, stems and multi-tracks, and you have to figure out how are you going to make this thing that was made before this immersive, complete 360 technology existed. How are you going to make it work in that format? And those are two very, very different things. I love it. I mean, I'm biased. Chris is a very good friend of mine. I've been to his studio, so I'm obviously not going to say bad things about my friend. But I think it's so difficult to do this stuff, and he approached it with the care that you would want and you would expect. And I think the best thing for a Dolby mix is to hear something differently in any way. You don't want it to just sound like the stereo mix that you know, but wider. Right, which a lot of Dolby stuff does do. You know, as you said, Matt, it's a new technology. People don't know how to do it, but there are very creative ways of trying to get into the artist's head, which is why it's important that you have somebody that worked with them and understood that process to do it. And I heard things in the Dolby mix that I hadn't heard before, or in a different way, and that's all I want from it, really. It's not replacing the stereo mix. If you want to go listen to that, it's a different experience, and I think it did its job in that respect.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm, you know, in no means critical of it. But it was the fact it's so different to me. I suppose it's kind of. But I will keep listening to it, and I'm interested to hear it. I did hear different things, but I didn't hear different things in the way of like, oh, that's deliberately been put in there for you to discover. It's like somebody, you know, taking part and saying, oh, look at these things maybe you didn't notice. So, which is always fascinating and interesting. But it did feel a bit jarring the first time around, but I'm sure I might come to love it.
I haven't heard the Dolby Atmos mix, but I have to say that I heard new things in just the remaster. I thought the remaster was fantastic, and there were things that popped out in synth layers, in Thunder. I was like, I've listened to this album like 100 bajillion times. I've never heard that before. I loved it. So there were new discoveries in there just on the remaster, which thumbs up from me.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's talk about where I guess we're getting into the sort of last section of our time. Was there anything that disappointed you about this set, or maybe didn't align with your expectations, or that you felt was a missed opportunity in the wider release and the strategy of it? I'm keen to explore that territory.
I think the omission of the Get Off videos from the Blu-ray was I can't understand that at all. It's not like there wasn't room on the disc. And I think that for something like this, there should at least be a sense of a completist set of everything that was officially released. You don't need to put every Vault track out, but at least like they're on YouTube. It's not like they're secret. So why not include them on the Blu-ray? And also, where were all the rest of the Cream remixes?
And where's Clocking the Jizz and all that stuff?
Yeah, where's Clocking the Jizz with the UFO sounds and all the interviews with the band? You know, that's great stuff.
I 100% agree with that. I mean, I'm probably one of only about 5 people who actually quite likes the B-sides and remix.
You and me.
Yeah, because I like, mostly from an archival point of view, where, as you say, completist, to have everything from the era, but also then you get gems like the damn near 10-minute get off version finally, and also the video version of Willing and Able, which I think is somewhat of a hidden gem from that disc. But at the same time, as you say, it's incomplete. So it would be nice to at least have everything from the era available, because I do think, like yourself, if you want to represent the era, you have to represent the era fully. And I know some people don't like the edits and some people don't like the inclusion of the remixes or whatever, but personally, if you're going to represent an album, I think you should have everything from the album.
Well, if you're going to put Thunder DJ Fade on there, why not House Bangers and Q In Doubt, you know? Ethereal mix.
Yeah, I just don't get, it's all about nostalgia, right, isn't it? So why isn't Get Off on there? Because it's that huge moment in terms of and singles be released on VHS. Prince, Madonna did them. They're huge moments and a huge part of the history. And it's something, and it's a huge, also we want to hear it, but it's a huge talking point because people got no idea that existed and what went on before. So I'm always part of informing the history in that way, and I just think that it should have been included because it was a huge moment, and we're all, not that we're ever going to give them up, but we're all waiting for a new pristine version of Get Off. And so I would have loved it to be on there. But I'm disappointed with Schoolyard being on there, and I have to just say from that perspective, because just from a basic level of you listen to it and listen to the lyrics and you hear all of that, I just don't understand why that's on there.
How did you feel about the podcast tracking down Calvary and talking to her?
Man, that was brilliant.
No,
I was riveted.
So the official podcast that came out for Diamonds and Pearls, they went and talked to the girl that's Schoolyard is supposedly about, and she was kind of like, that didn't happen, this didn't happen, whatever. But it was fascinating to hear, for sure.
Oh wow!
I completely
listen, but you know what I mean. I just feel that
I get it. It's a contention.
It's odd to kick off with it, and this is where maybe the chronological approach doesn't work. I mean, I can see it should be on there, for historical reasons, in the same way that people were upset about some of the tracks that didn't end up on the 1999 set that should be there, I guess, if you're doing it chronologically. So I can see the argument for included, and I understood that it did kick off the kind of creative process that led to that album. But it is a weird listening experience to start with this, and that this is what you're gonna, it sits oddly there. I think I probably would have moved it further in, but that would have upset the chronological order of things. But in terms of what's on there, I mean, I totally agree with the videos. I would love to have had the Get Off videos there, and we haven't really talked about the Diamonds and Pearls videos and how great, and of their time. Some of the, there's the Spike Lee video of Money Doesn't Matter Tonight, which is great and really nice to have. I mean, I'm in two minds about the flute instrumentals and the all the extra Cream mixes and I've got them on other forms already. So in a way, it would take at least one disc, possibly two, or at least one album, possibly two, to include all of those, which would have made it a bigger set, or you would have had to sacrifice something. And if,
Like under DJ Fade, we would have had to throw that in the bin.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get rid of DJ Fade. I can just turn the music down myself. I don't need, I don't need the DJ to do that for me. But I mean, I think, I would always take more vault tracks over singles edits, or maxi singles. I would always rather have more vault stuff. But I can see the logic as well that if you want to go to one place for Diamonds and Pearls, this should be it.
I think they were so different though. Like the remixes were really, really awesome and interesting and amazing. Far more so than your regular thing. I prefer remixes to just the edits, like the radio edit and that kind of thing. Mono mix, I can do without those. But if it's new material, like like when Prince did Purple Medley and he replayed all the stuff from scratch, you need that. That's essential. That stuff.
Yeah, Randy just mentioned in the chat that he's side-eyeing Well Done not being on this, and I think that was a common criticism when it came out, and I think Dwayne ultimately, again in that case, stated that it didn't fit their, the timeline that they had figured out. But those decisions, this gets to a larger point that like that context, like I love Dwayne. I respect that he has an incredibly difficult job trying to communicate some of this stuff, and is one of the only people that actually does give this context. But the estate as a whole, the label, anyone that's involved, I'm hoping for a lot more transparency over the coming years, which includes context of why we did this and why we didn't do that, and on a wider scale, right? The mysterious thing, only Prince could do that, right? Now he's not here, you have to tell us. Otherwise, things are going to get contentious. But I've told Rondell, that's all I can do.
What do you think they will ever go down that route of sharing that insight? I'm not sure that they particularly want to engage with the fans in that old fan club way. That's I mean, it would be nice to kind of like do that, and even to do, like, I know people are asking in the chat, it would be great to do a screening. If you did it in the context of a screening and had a Q&A and had the engagement there, perhaps that would be great, and then just stream it, that would just be lovely. But it's just interesting that those appeals have been like ignored, haven't they, for some time? Is it too scary for them to enter into the purple world? What do you think?
I mean, look, Londell's been around a long time. He knows how the game works, and if the demand feels like it makes sense on a business level to him, it's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then resources will not be put towards it. We do have to remember this is a business. This is a business. More so than ever, that's the case with not just this estate, any posthumous estate. I actually think the Prince estate is doing a much better job than a lot of other posthumous estates. That is a whole other hour-long conversation.
We're getting something out. We're getting all this something, yeah.
But yeah, one point that I wanted to make, actually, this is a little thing that I was sort of fascinated by. I feel like a lot of us had an expectation that Standing at the Altar was just going to be like the Margie version with Prince singing, and then it was a totally different version, and we were all like, whoa. Did you guys have that reaction as well?
Absolutely.
It's a great song either way, but
yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you do with some of that, I mean, and where you stop. Do you do live recordings of that song without Prince on? I mean, it's sort of, there is an alternative version where this box set is never ending. But yeah, no, I mean, but also,
this was the criticism, wasn't it, around originals, that some of the stuff on there was like sort of Frankenstein from, the other artist's version blended with an earlier Prince vocal. And
I mean, there is a weird thing with originals, I mean, I always feel slightly uneasy about them, as much as I love to have them, because we never knew what Prince would have thought of putting the originals out. We have we know that he would have wanted to put out the unreleased material at some point, unless there were reasons why he'd held it back. But with the originals, they were recorded for singers to listen to and then do their own version. So it is always I always do feel a bit I don't know, a bit weird about that. But of course, the answer to that is also I love having it and I love to hear it. So that overrides the kind of slight anxiety about it.
I have asked everything that I wanted to ask you guys. I'm going to hand it over to you to make points that we didn't cover. Hey, D'Angela's here.
Yes, I just, when you said like are there any questions the other panelists that you think that we should cover in this International Lover panel? If not, we can go into our break. Is there anything else any of you would like to say?
I'd just like to say thank you to you, D'Angela, for spearheading this. And every time I do one of these, I get to make a connection with some really, really great intellects within the Prince fan community. So I just want to thank the other panelists for their time, and it's been a real thrill. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you to you. Yeah. Sorry, thank you to you as well, D'Angela. Always come up with great panel titles, great panel combinations, and it always gets us thinking and gets the memory jogging. And really appreciate it because you are keeping the Prince message alive and interesting.
Yeah, thank you, D'Angela. Thank you to Casey for sharing it as well. It was a really great conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, sorry, you go, Casey. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I think a great sort of point for us all to end on was, I just want to ask, is this release, this Super Deluxe release, did it meet all of your individual, subjective, perhaps arbitrary wants and needs and requirements? Is it a success to you? I would say yes. Not perfect, but not a lot of flaws either. Ultimately a success for me.
Yeah, for me too. It massively exceeded my expectations.
I think it's my favorite of the Super Deluxes, and so yes, there are omissions, but the presentation is unbelievable, and I think that inviting the essayists, Andrea Swenson and all the others who contributed to the booklet, that's a great idea, and keeping the discourse going. It's it's a modern day version of liner notes. Remember how we poured over the liner notes of the hits, the B-sides, because it had new information and stuff in there. Yeah, so I think they did a really, really good job on 95% of it.
Yeah, I think it's beautifully presented. It exceeded my expectations in the presentation of it. Beautifully, and the archive is wonderful in it. And as Adam said, I think they did a great job with the essayists. It's all people that we know. Great. Hats off to D'Angela to be included as well. But I thought that was a really lovely touch. Often that's missing, and the fact that it wasn't just one person doing the notes was wonderful to see that there's an array of people doing the notes. So I thought that was a really good nod to everyone else out there that's kind of covering Prince in different ways as well. Loved it.
I think, as Adam and Karen both said, I don't think you can argue with the presentation and the packaging of the set. I mean, we'll all have our particular likes and dislikes of tracks. Certain tracks we like, certain tracks we don't. But as a product, I don't think you can argue with how, and also value for money. I mean, I paid, I think it was about £150 for it, I think, roughly, and it's 8 discs, 9 discs, something like that. I mean, if you look at other box sets from other artists where you get 4 or 5 discs, it can be £200. So for the volume and wealth of material you're getting for the money, I don't think you can argue. But as I say, everybody has their own likes and dislikes of certain tracks that should be included. But at that point, it's down to subjective taste rather than sort of objective appreciation of it as a product, which I think is spectacular. And the live show, it's worth the price of admission alone for the live show, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yep. Somebody just asked us a question about
controversial.
The question was, the leaks a disservice for those who purchased the box?
I think maybe putting a whole album's worth, like the whole Glam Slam audio up, maybe.
Yeah, I think it is.
Is
But I
that
think
what we're
also,
talking about? Was that leaked out before the release? Is that what
It was
we're-
on Spotify before the release.
Oh, that was
the
a release, though. That was a release. That wasn't a leak. I think there was a handful of the outtakes that were before they were on streaming.
I see. Okay.
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it, though, because of the cost. Prince always breaks the bank, I always said. When he was alive, he broke the bank. And we would have bought how many versions of this if we could. Some people might have done. And I think that it is a disservice, but I also kind of like get it because I know a lot of people, particularly in these times, couldn't stretch to it. So, you know, have a little bit of a leeway there. And in print style, it gets shut down, doesn't it? But, you know.
I'd actually be interested to know. Oh, sorry, Casey, you go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering. It'd be interesting to know which versions everybody bought of the box set. Did you go for the vinyl version? Did you go for the CD version, or are you streaming it?
I went for the CD because I was mainly interested in the Blu-ray.
Both, and the Atmos.
Yeah, I bought the CD
set.
I bought the CD set. I may still buy the vinyl set, but I bought both with Sign of the Times, and the vinyl one just sat on the shelf the whole time, just because of convenience and the fact that it weighs a ton. Yeah, it's difficult to get down. I think I like that both were presented in the same dimensions. So that the book that you get is the same no matter what version, because that wasn't the case with 1999. The CD Deluxe was in the much smaller set with the mini booklet. So I like that part of it. I will probably end up getting the vinyl at some point.
Yeah, I did the CD version this time because I thought moderation, because I always buy everything. So I did the CD version this time as well. And yeah, amazing.
Cool. I think we're at time. Yeah, here's D'Angela. Thank you, everyone.
Yes,
you made this very easy for me.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to remove you guys off the stage, and I'm going to bring on Arthur. Thank you so much, Casey, for moderating. Adam, Matt, even though I took you off stage, Matt, I'm so sorry. Declan, Karen, thank you so much for your time. Sometimes I'm a little discombobulated trying to do a gazillion things at one time. So my apologies. Please do not take it personally. Thank you so much. You guys started off this Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe virtual celebration with a bang. Thank you so much. I'm going to take you off.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. And all right.
Well, I'm awake. I am awake.
Wasn't that a great panel?
Yeah, that was an excellent way to open it up. And the chat is live. And in fact, we've had conversations about previous Super Deluxe sets compared to this. We've had conversations furthering the hip hop discussion. This is a nice setup for our next panel.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about our next panel before we actually take a break. We are going to take a break. So tell all of your friends who weren't able to join us for the first panel, and if they show up and they go, "What's going on? No one's talking. What's up?" Tell them we are taking a bio break until noon Eastern Standard Time. But we're super excited for the next roundtable. If you had fun in our first panel with the international lovers, you are going to probably crack up with the fellas.
Yeah, strap in.
Strap in. Headed by the one and only, my brother, and what did Prince do this week? Michael Dean. And we got to hear from Big Sexy, because I know he's going to talk about that Dolby Atmos breakdown.
I know he is.
Audio snob. So looking forward to that. We got Prince's friend. We got Law. We have my high school Prince friend, oldest Ricky Wyatt from Southwest DeKalb High School in Decatur, Georgia. And last but definitely not least, because I love him so, his music, but also his purple nerdum, Nicolay. Yeah. So you know it's going to be like going down, 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 down with our fellows panel at noon. I'm so super excited. So rest up, get some coffee, get some jogging in, whatever you need to do. For those of you who are on different time schedules, you do not want to miss this conversation. Thank you so much, Arthur, for being my co-pilot, and we'll see you guys at the top of the hour, noon Eastern Standard Time.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. And yes, can't wait. Thank you so much, The One. And I can't wait for your next generation panel. Can't wait. Thank you, Blade Brown. Yes, hit the like button, spread the word, use the hashtag. Oh, let me see if I can do this real quick, which is hashtag DPSDVC for Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe Virtual Celebration. Tell your friends if they want to be in the know, go to dpsdvc.substack.com, which is our newsletter. And then we have the website with all the speakers and the schedules and all that at dpsdvc.polysolid.com. Go get something to eat, move your bodies, all that jazz, and we will be back at the top of the hour.